Every year, on either the second or the third or the fourth Sunday after Epiphany, we hear again the reading of Jesus' first miracle, the miracle he performed at the wedding in Cana of Galilee. And every year we are reminded once again how God can turn disaster and shame, such as when a traditional Jewish wedding runs out of wine, into a feast of joy, celebration, and laughter. And perhaps, my brothers and sisters, this year, more than in previous years, we have an even greater need to hear this gospel text. We're acutely aware of the unraveling of so much in our world, things that we have taken for granted. And a wedding that runs out of wine seems not even to do justice to the scale of the problems that we're facing today. But please bear with me, because I believe today's gospel text has power to help us open our eyes, to move from despondency, fear, and a sense of hopelessness, powerlessness even, to a place of transformation into hope, joy, and celebration of life. A marriage in Cana in Galilee, a Hochzeit, a high time, a picture of life as it's meant to be lived. Marriage in the Bible is a picture of life reconciled with God and with one another. It's a celebration of life. And then the wine runs out, doesn't it just? Our experience tells us that the high times, the big moments, just don't last. They can't last. And then can come all too quickly disappointment, embarrassment, accusations, even shame. Mary gets involved, and she tries to involve Jesus, who doesn't want to push himself in uninvited. But Mary trusts, and Jesus takes what is at hand, 6 stone water jars. Now notice, he doesn't just say to the servants, take one of those jars. And by the way, these aren't little carafes of water. These are vats for filling the bath, nearly 700 litres capacity. So Jesus tells the servants to fill all 6 huge jars and then pour some of this bath water into the wine glass of the chief guest. We're not told, interestingly enough, what the servants thought about what they were doing. But as the bath water is poured, the miracle happens. Pure gift, pure grace. And it's a powerful picture telling us that when we offer the water of our lives in service to God and the world, then God turns it into the finest wine. Pure gift, pure grace. And it's not just any old plonk. This is 700 litres, which is 150 gallons, of the finest wine. I'm the son of a wine merchant. I appreciate this story. Jesus takes an embarrassing event at a wedding and turns it into the most eloquent message about life. And so can we, if and when we make overflowing grace our ethic, when we make abounding grace our goal, our path in life. Let me take you for a few minutes back to the early 1980s in South Africa. None of you were born by then, I know, so I'll teach you a little about it. Back then in South Africa was a time of apartheid. The apartheid government in South Africa had a highly trained army with advanced weaponry and even nuclear weapons. Nelson Mandela, representing the ANC, the African National Congress, had been in prison for more than 20 years. Many of us feared that it would take civil war to end this white apartheid regime. But there was no war. There was no victory and defeat in battle. Rather, the transformation came about through discussion and agreement. And for the process to start it needed, as Mandela put it, jaw, 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 not war, war, war. In his autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom, Mandela describes coming to a decision to move this forward while he was in solitary confinement. He writes, "My solitude gave me a certain liberty, and I resolved to use it to do something I'd been pondering for a long time, to begin discussions with the South African government. This would be extremely sensitive. Both sides regarded discussions as a sign of weakness and betrayal. Neither would come to the table until the other made significant concessions. But someone from our side," writes Mandela, "needed to take the first step." The discussions that Mandela began and undertook were effective. Sitting facing one another across the table, both sides recognized that they stood to lose by going to war, and they would gain if they could find a way to peace. They moved from a win-lose model of conflict to aiming for a win-win outcome. Conversations and negotiations took place between Nelson Mandela and F.W. de Klerk, the South African president at the time, and they played a pivotal role in bringing an end to apartheid. Mandela said, "During my lifetime, I have dedicated myself to this struggle of the African people. I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all people live together in harmony and with equal opportunities." Jointly, Nelson Mandela and F.W. de Klerk were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. It would have been unthinkable just years before. My brothers and sisters, when two people come together, when two people relate to each other authentically and humanly, God is the electricity that surges between them. So wrote Martin Buber. When two people relate to each other authentically and humanly, God is the electricity that surges between them. Water turns into wine. We all learnt it in school. 1 + 1 = 2. But in human relations, 1 + 1 = 2 and a bit. And in God's world, 1 + 1 = 2 and a bit. I'll just give you one example. Copper is strong, tin is strong, but put copper and tin together to make bronze, it's way stronger. D.H. Lawrence, the great British novelist, wrote, "Water is H2O, hydrogen 2 parts, oxygen 1 part. But there's also a third thing that makes it water, and nobody knows what that is." My brothers and sisters, we live at a time of great unraveling. The worsening climate crisis, the threat of war and the costs of warfare, pollution and destruction of our natural world, a widening inequality, threats to democracy, misinformation, you know it. Nearly half the population live on less than $5.50 a day. And in 2021, more than 900 million people suffered from malnutrition. 900 million. And some say, pull your belt tighter, business as normal, we need the economies of the world to grow, greater consumption leads to greater growth. But there's another way of looking at it. And we could say it's time for a great transformation. We could say it's a time for turning water into wine. We could say it's a time for turning sunshine and wind into power and electricity. And I'm here to tell you today, this transformation is actually happening. Just as the agricultural revolution 10,000 years ago saw the domestication of plants and animals and led to a profound shift in the way people lived, in the way the Industrial Revolution 1850 onwards led to a huge and dramatic transition, so today the whole basis of society is slowly being transformed, including people's relations with one another and with the earth. A comparable shift of the same magnitude as the agricultural or the industrial revolution is taking place today. And it's called the ecological revolution or the sustainability revolution. You could call it the Great Transformation or the Great Turning. And it started. It's already happening. Paul Hawken, in his book Blessed Unrest, calls it the largest social movement in history. He estimated 100,000 organizations across the world have already been formed working towards ecological sustainability and social justice. But he soon came to see that he was miscalculating by a factor of about 10. He now says there are over 1 million, maybe even as many as 2 million organizations in our world today working towards this great transformation, this great turning. And just as Mandela's turning in South Africa did not happen in a vacuum, nor does ours. Millions of people across the world then joined in campaigns and boycotts. And today, it's the school children with Fridays for Future. It's an unlikely combination of students and senior citizens with Extinction Rebellion. Each individual separate activity and prayer adds and interacts with other actions in ways that change the bigger picture. It's happening today all over the place. 2021, Harvard University stopped investing its endowment fund in fossil fuel industry. That's $41 billion. And it wasn't just Harvard University. At the time, 1,300 other institutions had already done the same, and more since then. New types of bank have started operating what they call a triple return, with not just financial profits, but with social and environmental benefits. My brothers and sisters, we're not there yet, not by a long way. But 6 huge vats of water Jesus told the servants to prepare are standing ready. The transformation in our day is underway. 1 + 1 = 2 and a bit. And when we come together with hope and faith and trust in our hearts, when we come together with a can-do mentality, God provides the miracle. God is with us. A few years ago, I was standing just here at the end of a sermon, and in a spontaneous, ad-lib, unscripted moment, I said, wouldn't it be wonderful if we planted a well? And wouldn't it be wonderful if we planted a well each year for the next 10 years? Not much happened immediately, but Felix, who's at the back, and Charity, who I think is in the office, they came to me and they said, we want to build a well in northern Nigeria, central northern Nigeria, but we've done all the groundwork, we haven't got the money to build the well. So I didn't say anything to them, but I planned. And we had some collections, we raised money, and we built the well. The following year, a school in Uganda wrote to me saying we don't have fresh water. So that was our well for the next year. The following year, a friend of mine from Yemen said to me, there's been huge movements of refugees across the country. They don't have access to water in this dry country. So we had an interfaith project in Yemen, and we built a well there at a time of civil war. The next one was in Tanzania. That was a solar-powered well. And then a second one in Yemen, in a different refugee camp. This year in the spring, we built one in Malawi. This autumn, we built one in a school in Uganda. Next year, we're going to build a second one in Tanzania. Last summer, or maybe the summer before, I was with the former mayor of Charlottenburg in a meeting. And he looked at me and he said, "That was a great thing we did when we built that well in Yemen." And I said, "Yeah, and the other 7. And he said, "You've built 7 wells. 1 + 1, my brothers and sisters, equals 2 and a bit." And even this Christmas, from our collections, we're planting 1,000 trees on a nature reserve in Malawi from the gifts from our Christmas collections. And we're looking right now to move in this church towards a CO2 neutral heating system with heated pew cushions. We're looking into it. We've done interfaith football, and now we've started organising 2 separate monthly prayers for peace, trying to bring the faith communities together at this time. The first one was here on New Year's Eve. 1 + 1 equals 2 and a bit. My brothers and sisters, may I ask you, open your eyes to what God might be calling you to when you step out in faith. What might God be asking you to join in this great turning? Water is becoming wine in our day. May God's will be done. Amen. We keep a minute or two of quiet together before Kate sings.